Merry Christmas 2025. I got a message from a good friend giving me the idea of doing a Christmas EIR video. And so I perused the archives for something related to Christmas, and I found this. This is actually from 4th of July 2025. It's very rare that I do anything current. Usually I'm focused on the late 70s and 80s. But this is an exception because I think, first of all, I got the request, and second, I think this is very important in today's American landscape, and America being of great interest to the rest of the world and largely misunderstood. Incredibly misunderstood by 99% of the people, not only Americans, but worldwide, misunderstood. So let me begin. This is, as you see, from EIR, Volume 52, number 27, 2025, the 4th of July. Celebrate the 4th of July with truth. The Full Story of Washington Crossing the Delaware by Lynn Speed. June 30th, the LaRouche organization TLO is currently commemorating the 250th anniversary of the founding of the United States with a series of articles, tours, video reports, seminars, concerts, and more. Lynn Speed, longtime leader of the LaRouche movement in the New York metropolitan area, made a video in June, soon to be released by TLO, on the significance of General George Washington and his forces making a treacherous crossing of the Delaware River on December 25th, 1776, from Pennsylvania to New Jersey, surprising the enemy and marking a shift towards success for the revolutionaries. Mrs. Speed has studied this history for many years, including during doing a tour visit to the site of the crossing. The following article has been adapted by EIR from her forthcoming video presentation. Okay. Many of the crises in which the world is now immured are due in large measure to the profound ignorance of Americans of the history surrounding the creation of their own republic. Far too many U.S. citizens have no idea of the principles on which the nation was founded. Many are unaware of even the date of our Declaration of Independence from the British Empire, or what it signifies beyond the 3 B's: baseball, barbecue, and beer. Many think that the occasion of the 4th of July anniversary should not be celebrated at all, but denounced because they see America from its beginning simply as a country of enslavers and enslaved people. Many propose to extol the occasion in the wrong way. They see America since its inception as, and there's that wonderful painting. They see America since its inception as a campaign to become a glorified version of the British Empire. America first. Bigger, better, stronger, more brutal, richer, and perhaps whiter. These extremes have nothing to do with the true purpose and intent of the founding of our republic. Understanding where we come from is crucial to understanding who we are or who we should be today. The definition of history, historia in Greek, literally means investigation, the search for truth. Here we will take a closer look at the story of Washington crossing the Delaware, the momentous military flank by General George Washington in 1776, and who was in the boat with him. The famous painting by Emanuel Leutze of Washington crossing the Delaware is an excellent metaphorical image of the diverse forces that united throughout the colonies to fight for and win our revolution. The significance of the crossing. Almost everyone knows Leutze's powerful painting. It depicts George Washington and troops crossing the Delaware River the night of Christmas, December 25th to 26th, 1776, from the Pennsylvania side to launch a surprise attack against the Hessian troops who had been stationed across the river at Trenton, New Jersey. This is undoubtedly one of the most significant days in the creation of the United States. During the previous 5 months, the American patriots had lost every battle. In New York, they had been driven from Long Island to northern Manhattan and Westchester, then across the Hudson River to Fort Lee in New Jersey. They were forced to retreat from there to cross New Jersey and to ford the Delaware River into Pennsylvania. The Continental Army had lost more than half its strength, down from the level of 24,000 troops in August of 1776. While there were approximately a dozen other separate commands, they were scattered across New York, Pennsylvania, and Virginia, so that only 2,400 soldiers remained under General Washington's direct command to be mustered for the Trenton battle. Despite these difficulties, the bold initiative by Washington to cross the Delaware led to a decisive victory by the American patriots and turned the tide of the war. This scene of the crossing conveyed its significance, was painted 75 years later by Emanuel Leutze, who was born in Germany in 1816, lived for a while in the young United States, then returned to Germany. He completed the painting in 1850 during the period of revolutionary Republican upsurges in Europe. The painting came to the U.S. in 1851. It was purchased and displayed throughout the United States. It was used during the Civil War to raise money for the Union cause, the Sanitary Commission, and the anti-slavery movement. It was later donated to the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City and hangs now in its American wing. If you have only seen reproductions, you will be surprised. It is colossal, measuring 12 by 21 feet. There have been many attacks against the painting's so-called inaccuracies in depicting the scene that Christmas evening. It is said it is the wrong type of boat, the wrong people are in the boat, the river didn't look like that, etc. None of these criticisms are to the point. The picture captures perfectly the spirit and truth of the historical moment. But before looking at the composition of the painting, it is important to understand certain key points about the history of our republic which are unique and which the painting does, in fact, beautifully depict. The American Revolution, key points of history. 3 points about the American Revolution are important to understand to truly appreciate the makeup of the forces who carried out Washington's crossing in 1776 and other flanks and battles of the Revolutionary War, and also to sense the inspirational impact of the Leutze painting during the 1848 Republican uprisings in Europe. First, the United States is the longest continuous federal constitutional republic in the world, albeit with flaws. Notably, the battle to eradicate slavery was not won at the time of the Revolution, despite vehement opposition to slavery by several of the founders, including Benjamin Franklin, Alexander Hamilton, John Adams, Samuel Adams, John Jay, Gouverneur Morris, and Thomas Paine. The lines from the preamble of our Constitution, "We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union," makes clear that our government is not a finished product, but depends on its citizens being involved in a continuous process of changing and hopefully improving the nation. Secondly, the United States was founded by a global conspiracy that for over a millennium attempted to establish a form of sovereign nation-state based on the principle of natural law, the general welfare or common good of all mankind, and in which much of the world participated. The Declaration of Independence states, "The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world." Unquote. The signers were addressing themselves to the entire world, their contemporaries as well as posterity. That would include us today. At the time, throughout the American colonies and around the world, people rose to the occasion. Support of foreign nations and individuals is crucial to the victory for the cause of independence. This included active support from France, Spain, and the Netherlands, Russia, Morocco, which has the longest standing friendship treaty with the US, pledged in 1777, Venezuela, and others. There was a critical participation from the networks created by Gottfried Leibniz in Germany and throughout England, Scotland, Ireland, and Wales. From Haiti came a significant contingent of over 500 free men of color known as the Chasseurs Volontaires du Saint-Domingue. They fought alongside American and French forces during the siege of Savannah in 1779. Several of the participants from that unit later fought under Toussaint Louverture in the struggle for the Haitian independence. Thirdly, the American Revolution is unique in that people of every background, ethnic origin, religion, and social status participated. The rich, the poor, black and white, free and enslaved, men and women, Native Americans, and those of European, Ibero-American, and African origin. This historical reality poses many questions if we are able to get at the truth. Why did such a diverse group of people unify to create a revolution? What was the purpose for which they agreed to give their life, liberty, and sacred honor? Certainly it was not, at least for the majority of people, any pragmatic reason. Everyone had different notions of liberty, but they were all united by higher principle, not by their present circumstances. They were united by a noble idea, the struggle to create a society, a republic, based on the conception, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. General Washington and the Continental Army. On June 15, 1775, George Washington was appointed by the Second Continental Congress to lead the Continental Army. This came just weeks after the Battle of Lexington and Concord on April 19th, and 2 days before the Battle of Bunker Hill on June 17th. On the 2nd of July, General Washington arrived at Cambridge Commons to find a motley collection of disparate, undisciplined troops. It is revealing to know what Washington encountered and how he dealt with it. The army was a widely divergent mix. There were savage-looking Western backcountry regiments of ace riflemen, along with wealthy and well-groomed members of the planter class of the Maryland Battalion, together with Colonel John Glover's Marblehead, Massachusetts regiment. This latter regiment included free black Americans and Native Americans who were fishermen and whalers. These men were positioned in their units as they were at sea, regarded for their intellect, courage, and cooperation with their crewmates in dangerous situations, not judged by wealth, social status, or skin color. David Hackett Fisher, in his excellent book, Washington's Crossing, Oxford University Press, 2004, recounts a particular incident showing the challenge this created for military leadership. Fisher writes, including quotations from a contemporary source, quote, "It happened in Cambridge when a regiment of Virginia riflemen in white linen frocks ruffled and fringed met Glover's Marblehead regiment in round jackets and fisher's trousers. There were mutual shouts of derision, and then something worse. Many of the Virginians were slave owners, and some of the Marblehead men were former African slaves. Insults gave way to blows, and blows to a fierce struggle with biting and gouging. One spectator wrote that in less than 5 minutes, more than 1,000 combatants were on the field. Americans from one legion began to fight Americans from another part of the country on a larger scale than the battles at Lexington and Concord. Washington acted quickly. A soldier from Massachusetts named Israel Trask watched him go about it. As the fighting spread through the camp, Washington appeared with his colored servant both on horseback. Together, the general and William Lee rode straight into the middle of the riot. Trask watched Washington with awe as, quote, with the spring of a deer, he leaped from his saddle, threw the reins of his bridle into the hands of his servant, and rushed into the thickest of the melee with an iron grip, seized 2 tall, brawny, athletic, savage-looking riflemen by the throat, keeping them at arm's length, alternately shaking and talking to them. Talking was probably not the right word. The rioters fighting turned in amazement to watch Washington in action, then fled at the top of their speed in all directions. The trouble ended without courts, irons, or whips that were more terrible than death to a proud back settler. In a few moments, George Washington and William Lee had restored order to the army. Trask remarked that hostile feelings between 2 of its best regiments were extinguished by 1 man. This incident, besides its important historical specifics, serves to demonstrate one of the favorite adages of Lyndon LaRouche. To get an idea across, you first have to get their attention. William Lee, Washington's trusted manservant, was the only one who could keep up with Washington, who was renowned for his riding skills. Born a slave in Virginia, Lee was freed and granted an annuity by Washington in his will. He was one of the first people the Marquis de Lafayette came to visit when he returned to the United States in 1825 to tour the nation 50 years after the start of the Revolution and to campaign for John Quincy Adams' election to the presidency. Washington's compatriots in the boat. In the Leutze painting, Washington's small boat is crowded with 12 or 13 individuals who represent precisely the type of mixture you would have found in the Continental Army. Take a closer look at who's who. Center of the boat, George Washington stands as the tallest figure, dressed in the Continental uniform of buff and blue. Note that he holds a telescope to see ahead and carries a saber to prosecute the war. Lieutenant James Monroe stands to the right of Washington, holding the American flag straight against the storm. He became the 5th President of the United States. In the Battle of Trenton, Lieutenant Moore led a unit of Virginian infantry and was seriously injured when he was hit by a musket ball. Parenthetically, Monroe's life was saved by Dr. Riker, who had joined Monroe's company as a volunteer just the night before. Smallwood's Maryland Regiment. Silk stockinged soldiers with white linen frocks, ruffled and fringed, are represented by a prosperous Baltimore merchant shown center below with a boat, coat, and oil hat. Bow of the boat. A Western backcountry rifleman is at the prow with deerskin leggings, visible, and hunting shirt. A Scottish American with a Balmoral tartan hat, typically from West Pennsylvania, is below the deer slayer. A Black American Marblehead fisherman is shown on the starboard side. He wears a short blue tarpaulin jacket. The skilled Marblehead unit had saved Washington's Continental Army from certain destruction by rowing them across the East River at the Battle of Long Island on the 27th of August, 1776. The substantial presence of Black Americans in Colonel Glover's unit and from other New England towns which had Black Americans enslaved and free had been active parts of their militia units for years. This was a major impetus in getting Washington to accept enlistments of African American soldiers. By the end of the war, Black Americans were being actively recruited, and several rose to the rank of colonel in New England. At the siege of Yorktown in 1781, Baron Closen, a German officer in the French Royal Regiment, estimated about 1/4 of the American army to be black men. There's Lynn Speed. In the center to the right, the androgynous figure down front in red, flowing shirt sleeves, is possibly a woman. Many women join the military, sometimes disguised as men to be with their husbands. Of note is Margaret Corbett from the Kings Bridge section of the Bronx, New York, who was the first woman to receive a pension for military service. A soldier in full dress uniform appears on the starboard side holding his hat. The full dress is unusual, showing a blue coat with red facing, signifying the Hazlitt, Delaware Regiment. Then we have 2 soldiers from New Jersey and Pennsylvania are shown, both wearing blanket coats. One holds a flintlock musket with a ramrod attached. The other is very sick, wounded, with head bandages. Stern of the boat, a Native American is shown, distinguished by his features and wearing a Western hunting shirt, a beaded pouch, and moccasins on his feet. Celebrate July 4th by discovering history. I had an opportunity a couple of years ago in December to visit the site in Pennsylvania where Washington crossed the Delaware River. There is a reenactment conducted there annually in December. 2 out of every 3 attempts to cross over to the New Jersey side fail due to the rough currents, even in relatively mild weather. The determination to succeed, so clearly depicted on the faces shown in Leutz's painting, despite the hardships and storms, are key to victory then and in weathering the crises we face today. We invite you all to join this year-long celebration by studying, investigating, writing, touring, and sharing your newfound discoveries of the history of the American Revolution with your fellow citizens. I hope this picture of the full story of Washington's crossing gives us hope that, as different as we are and as flawed as we are, we can succeed in learning who we are so that we can once again, in the semi-quincentennial year of the American Revolution, become the nation that we were intended to be, a beacon of hope and a temple of liberty for all mankind. Merry Christmas again, and Happy New Year